Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Church in Ocean Park. We have a really interesting program for you today. And I'm going to start with a song. I put the lyrics in the chat. This is De Colores. I'm going to mute everybody. Excuse me. And De Colores is originally a Mexican folk song, but it was adopted by several different groups, including the United Farm Workers of America. We're going to hear more about that later.
De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores es el arco iris que vemos lucir, y por eso los grandes amores, muchos colores me gustan a mí, y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Los polluelos con el pío, 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 pío. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí.
Thank you so much, and welcome everybody. Welcome to Church in Ocean Park. And today, yes, it is a special day. Louise and I are particularly excited because the title of today's message is Beware the Movement That Sings. So glad that you are here at the Church in Ocean Park, a wonderful, caring, interfaith community. And Ramadan Mubarak and Ramadan Kareem to all who are keeping that tradition in Islam that just began. I believe it began Friday. Is that true, Craig Ali, that Ramadan began on Friday?
Actually, it was cited in some communities Friday night. And as a result, it wasn't cited here in Los Angeles, but it was cited in San Diego. And one of the brothers that I'm close with talked with somebody in San Diego who had sighted the moon. It was indeed confirmed by another group of brothers that he knew in Canada, where the moon was sighted. And if I may, you're supposed to sight the moon. We was expecting to see the crescent Friday night, but if you don't sight the moon, you're not supposed to fast. But if you talk to someone who has sighted it, then you begin the fast the very next day.
Wow. Thank you.
This is what happened, yesterday. Mm-hmm. Since we didn't sight it Friday night, but somebody else did that was of the community and communicated to us, then we fasted the following day.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Craig Ali. And yes, Ramadan Mubarak and Ramadan Kareem. Welcome. Yes, we're so glad that we have a community that is diverse and we continue to learn and grow from each other and with each other, treating ourselves and others with respect. And our community, well, we love to learn new things and to be educated and to challenge ourselves and our relationships and the world. And we embrace creative expression, singing at every opportunity. And today is one of those days. I'm Dr. Kim Harris, a very proud member of the church in Ocean Park. And you may be wondering if you are welcome. Well, you're welcome if you're Muslim or if you're Jewish. You're welcome if you are Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Wiccan, atheist, or some combination or something else all together. You're welcome if you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, boosted 2, 3, or 4 times. You're welcome if you are a citizen, if you are undocumented, if you are a refugee. And we extend a special invitation to those who are single, married, divorced, gay, transgender, quite rich, or living on the edge. We extend a special invitation to crying newborns, just browsing, just woke up, or just got out of jail. We don't care if you are more religious than your local imam or if you haven't been to synagogue since your niece's bat mitzvah. We extend a special invitation to those who are over 60 but not grown up yet, and to teenagers who are growing up too fast. Some of you may say, I'm working too hard. Some may say, I don't work. Some are trying to figure out if they're going to go back to working in person or if they're going to continue working at home. Well, you are welcome too. If you can't spell, if you spell really well, or if you're bored, if you're way tired of being on Zoom, but heard this is a strange church and you wanted to check it out. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. And to center ourselves, we continue to sing, to chant actually, a chant from Thich Nhat Hanh. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. So please take a good deep breath and let us chant together. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Janet Gollery McKithen, and I'm the minister at the church in Ocean Park, and I also welcome you here. And as you know, we are a diverse congregation, a diverse group of folks, and so you may hear something that you disagree with. And if so, that's by intent, sort of, because we want to be able to expand our knowledge of how people think and what people's perspectives are. And so you may hear a perspective you don't understand or you disagree with. So if that happens, feel free to put that subject title in the chat and your name and the fact that you want to talk about that later, and we'll set that up for you. So thank you so much for being here and being willing to have our perspectives widened every day. But we're very excited about this morning and about the topic because, as you know, music is incredibly important anytime, but especially for movements. It helps movements move along. So we're very, very excited about that. We begin with a land acknowledgement. We understand that no matter where we are sitting on stolen land. in California, in Santa Monica. We are sitting on the land that was stolen from the Quiche, the Tongva, and the Chumash peoples, among others. We understand that they are still among us, and we pledge ourselves to be a part of the culture of repair. And so we acknowledge where we are sitting. So welcome to the church in Ocean Park.
Thank you, Janet. Now I'd like to share with you a song that I don't know exactly when it was written, but, well, Woody Guthrie wrote it. So it's a song with lyrics written by Woody Guthrie. And it talks about, in 1948, which is 73 years ago, and it talks about a crash of a plane near Los Gatos Canyon up in Northern California. And, you know, I believe that within 15 years ago, they found the names of the people who died in this plane crash. And it wasn't known at the time. That's the whole point of the song. These people were only known as deportees. So deportees, also known as plane wreck at Los Gatos. The crops are all in and the peaches are rotting. The oranges are packed in their creosote dumps. They're flying you back to the Mexican border to pay all your money to wade back again. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rosalita, adios mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be deportees. And that's the chorus. Let's do it again. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rosalita, adios mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be deportees. My father's own father, he waded that river. They took all the money he made in his life. My brothers and sisters come working the fruit trees. They rode the big trucks till they lay down and died. The sky plane caught fire over Los Gatos Canyon, a fireball of lightning, and it shook all the hills. Who are these comrades? They died like dry leaves. The radio tells me they're just deportees. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rosalita, adios mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be deportees. We died in your hills, we died in your deserts, we died in your valleys, we died on your plains. We died beneath your trees and we died in your bushes. Both sides of the river we died just the same. Some of us are illegal and some are not wanted. Our work contract's out and we have to move on. But it's 600 miles to that Mexican border. They chase us like outlaws, like rustlers, like thieves. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rosalita, adios mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be big orchards. Is this the best way we can grow all our fruit? To fall like dry leaves and rot on the topsoil and be called by no name except deportee. Goodbye to my one, goodbye, Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be deportees. All they will call you will be deportees.
Thank you so much, Louise. Beware a movement that sings. Our jumping off point for this morning was actually thinking about remembering and celebrating Cesar Chavez and United Farm Workers. And that song, Deportees, that was certainly one of the ones that continues to be sung and was sung at the height of that movement. So thinking about Cesar Chavez, there actually is a new movie that just came out this past week called Song for Cesar. But it not only talks about him, but also about others who are singing and others who are singing in movements and what that means. And I know one of the wonderful things about Church in Ocean Park that we have many people here involved in various movements and certainly involved in the singing. So just to show you a bit about what that movie is, and hopefully we'll be able to find it and actually go to see Song for Cesar.
Is it just an inspiration that I'm searching for? Like a sailor across the ocean seeking to explore. Like a never-ending battle.
It was said somewhere along the line, beware of a movement that sings.
Will I be forever?
Because that's the music is what lifts everything.
I want you to take out everybody in those fields.
Cesar, he lived his life with farm workers.
Senor Chavez, his dreams, his hopes, his desires, his work will live as long as we who are alive keep it alive.
Big boss man, can you hear me when I call?
The relationship between the owners and the people doing the work was appalling to me. It was something that I could do to help, raise money, bring awareness. Well, then it was time not to eat grapes. Grapes did not get eaten.
I've always been the happiest when I was doing activism and music at the same time. I think the deciding factor in whether you're going to make real social change or not is risk. Are you willing to take a risk? And the farm workers took the risks.
They don't care whether they're stripes, and as long as they're Mexicans, they're stopping him and beating him up in the streets.
Came across your border just to work for you.
It's a fight. Hardworking people have to fight for every scrap, for every dollar in this world.
I have two wings. In this wing, it was B.B. King and Tito Puente, John Lee Hooker, Miles Davis. And on this hand was Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X, and the Black Panthers. And to me, it was always about doing this with the music.
Music has always been part of our history as far as our Mexican roots. The corrido goes all the way back to the Mexican Revolution of 1910.
We use music for the movement, and that's where we got a lot of money to continue doing our work,
And just the whole idea of bringing rock musicians behind a movement, it was a very effective thing.
Up to California.
Music is important to affairs of the heart. As soon as I knew that it was Cesar, and that it was for the farm workers. I was committed.
And what will you be given to your brown-eyed children?
We as artists had a purpose, and that purpose was to be faithful to each audience and to bring our stories, our theater, our plays, our music to the people, because that's where it belonged.
Once social change begins, it cannot be reversed. You cannot uneducate the person who has learned to read. You cannot humiliate the person who feels pride. You cannot oppress the people who are not afraid anymore. And you cannot stamp out a people's cause.
Beware a movement that sings. Now, of course, there have been other singing movements, and within our own community, we have some wonderful people that have been part of singing movements. So, Reverend Janet, I think you had something to read to us.
Yes, I'm going to read something by Guy Carawan, but first I wanted to share something briefly with you. Guy Carawan was an incredibly important part of the civil rights movement through his music and so much more. He was influential for many people, and he was so for our friend Ross Altman. And I need to let you know, some of you know that Ross Altman had a period of very dangerous health issues, but he's on the road to recovery. He's doing better and he's getting better. So we thank God for that. But he did write something about Guy Carawan, and he said, "My first connection to Guy was being honored to actually play him in a local production of my friend Angeline Butler. Many of us know Angeline. Voices of the Student Sit-In at the church in Ocean Park. Angeline was an original participant in the historic Nashville sit-ins in February of 1960. Guy wrote a great song about this historic moment in the civil rights movement. It was called Ballad of the Student Sit-ins. And Ross said, I got to play Sisters Sit with Dignity, Brothers Sit with Pride, Side by Equal Side. He summed up the civil rights movement in one simple refrain, ain't you got it right?
Ain't you got it right? Ain't you got it right? Ain't you got it right? To the tree of life. Oh, ain't you got it right? Ain't you got it right? Ain't you got it right? To the tree of life, the tree of life. You can tell all my sisters, oh, and sing it to my brothers. Oh, they got it right to the tree of life. Oh, say it to the hungry, oh, those who are homeless, that they got it right to the tree of life. Ain't you got it right? 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 To the tree of life. Oh, sing that again. Oh, ain't you got a right? Ain't you got a right? Ain't you got a right to the tree of life, to the tree of life?
Guy and Candy Carowin wrote, having witnessed the civil rights era, most of us take for granted the notion of adapting well-known songs to situations of the present. It wasn't always so. Bernice Johnson Reagan has pinpointed the moment in 1962 at a mass meeting in Albany, Georgia, when she understood. Here's a quote from Dr. Reagan. Charlie Jones looked at me and said, Bernice, sing a song. And I started, over my head, I see trouble in the air. By the time it got to where trouble was supposed to be, I didn't see any trouble. So I put freedom in there. That was the first time I had the awareness that these songs were mine and I could use them for what I needed.
I see freedom in the air over my head. I see freedom in the air over my head. I see freedom in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see justice in the air. Over my head, I see justice in the air. Over my head, I see justice in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Now, Bernice Reagan, who became, of course, Bernice Johnson Reagan and founder of that group Sweet Honey in the Rock, she was originally singing it like she had sung it in her daddy's church, so singing it from the spirituals tradition. But some of the other young people she worked with in the civil rights movement and some of the other civil rights freedom singers like Betty Mae Fikes, they did that same song with more of a gospel feel to it, but same thing. Take a song that you knew and adapt it for what you need. And they sang it like this. Up over my head, I see freedom in the air. Up over my head, I see freedom in the air. Up over my head, I see freedom in the air. I really do believe, yes, I really do believe there's a God somewhere. Up over my head, I see justice in the air. Up over my head, I see justice in the air. Up over my head, I see justice in the air. I really do believe, yes, I really do believe there's a God somewhere. Up over my head, I hear music in the air. Up over my head, I hear music in the air. Up over my head, I hear music. I really do believe, yes, I really do believe there's a God somewhere. Then, of course, there were times when they put some very specific kinds of things into songs, like when they sang, I'm going to sit at the welcome table. I'm going to sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm going to sit at the welcome table. I'm going to sit at the welcome table one of these days. I'm gonna get my civil rights. I'm gonna get my civil rights. Oh, one of these days, hallelujah. I'm gonna get my civil rights. I'm gonna get my civil rights one of these days. I'm gonna sit at the Woolworth counter. Yes, I am now. I'm gonna sit at the Woolworth counter one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the Woolworth counter. I'm gonna sit at the Woolworth counter one of these days. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me, yeah. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me one of these days. One of these days. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. Oh, I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. One of these days. Sit at the welcome table.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. So now is the time for community sharing, and I hope that your juices are going now about the songs that you've been exposed to and been important to you during any movements you've been involved with or during different times of your life, and how the music has been important to you. And so we'll have a time of sharing about that. And I see that Louise has her hand up first.
Yes, I do. I wanted to share something that really moved me. There's a movie. I'm going to share screen for a second. There's a movie called The Singing Revolution, and it was from 2006. And it tells the moving story of how the Estonian people peacefully regained their freedom from Russian invasion and helped topple an empire. That thousands of people did choirs in the streets, apparently. But I remember watching this movie, and I want to see it again. You can get it on Prime for $3.99. It says here, the young people, without any political party and without any politicians, just came together, not only tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands, to gather and to sing and to give this nation a new spirit. And they peacefully kicked out the Soviets' invasion. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Louise, you went right where I was thinking. You watch the Ukrainians, and it's fascinating because what the music that seems to be inspiring them, and music has been at the forefront, but has been, I guess, what you call classical music. But it's been so amazing with, people wheeling pianos out in the squares with bombed out buildings around them, or violins, or opera singers, and it's their opera houses that they're protecting. And I had heard about that movie that you brought up, Louise, and I'm kind of glad we're doing this today, because this has been a hard period of time and even a hard week. But I was thinking about how classical music so infuses that culture, and from the most elite to the not most elite. And then I don't know if you've seen this little girl that she was singing a Disney song, I think, but then in front of a big audience, they had her sing their national anthem. And she had perfect pitch, and she was like 6 years old. But that's what and there seems to be, some rock musicians. And then I was thinking of something, well, I guess I was thinking Disney, which is a little bit interesting. But again, it's this strong cultural attachment to classical music that probably was written by many of written by composers from their culture, which I realize I don't really know.
Thank you for sharing that, Claudia. Craig?
While speaking on the subject of movement songs, I am reminded of one of the classics, We Shall Overcome. And as a child, I distinctly remember one of the lines in there that I don't hear when they sing it, at the Martin Luther King Festival or Remembrance today. And it's in, I guess you could say, remembrance and acknowledgement that it upset so many white people in the South that black people and white people were doing something together. And that line was, black and white together now. And so, when Kim said, that Sister Bernice Johnson had made the song hers, that struck a complete chord within me, because by and large, when we look at We Shall Overcome, I don't remember that being from any black, inspired author or writer. I think that was a song coined by either Pete Seeger or one of the other, artists in that. But we had more or less adopted it. And what stood out most in that was black and white together. So I just wanted to more or less reflect on that, because that was very, very significant to me. And that was very, very significant to my father, who, as part of the movement, always more or less said, we need to be integrated in this struggle, because the respect that those in power, will have for us if indeed they see that there is a combined effort within this. So thank you.
Right. Thank you. I think Dr. Kim might be saying something.
Yes, yeah. So thank you so much, especially for sharing that story about the importance of the song to both you and to your father. It does have an interesting history. Actually, it began as a spiritual. There's a spiritual that, one of those original songs that said, I'll overcome, I'll overcome, I'll overcome someday. If in my heart I do believe, I'll overcome someday. And then I think in the 20s or 30s, I have to look this up, some of the tobacco workers began singing that song. And these were mostly black, but not all, black tobacco workers in, I believe, North Carolina. And they began singing that when they had their strikes and when they were working for better wages. And Guy Carawan heard them singing that, and also because Highlander Folk School, where he and Candy Caroline were working, they were you know, for a long time, they were working with people, helping them have music for their union movements. And so from the black tobacco workers, Guy learned "We Shall Overcome." And then he brought it to Highlander, and of course people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks and definitely Black and White Together gathered at the Highlander Folk School, and they sang it together, and it was illegal for them even to be in the room together, you know. So, you know, so that song definitely has an interesting history. And Pete Seeger, what's interesting with African American music, especially coming out of the spirituals, the word "I" really means we. So if you hear, you know, something like, you know, "Guide my feet while I run this race," then they're thinking about we, you know, we're together, because that word "I" means we. And so what Bernice Johnson Reagan says is that if you hear one of those songs and you hear it change to "we," then you know that there's some white influence in the song. So "I'll Overcome" became "We Shall Overcome" because of the influence of people like Pete Seeger. So it does actually have roots in the African American experience and in the union experience and in the civil rights experience. And when they were singing Black and White Together, they knew that just being there, singing together at the Highlander Folk School, the police and state troopers would show up and cut the lights out and, you know, come in there, seeing who's in there. And it was really a very scary time. So not only that verse, Black and White Together, came out of that, but also when they sang, "We Are Not Afraid." Yeah, that verse actually was created as the police were going around shining flashlights in people's faces. So these songs are so interesting, and the courage that people had as they were singing these songs to describe their experience and to help them not be afraid in some very trying times. So thanks so much, Craig. Thank you.
Thank you both for your insights. Thank you so much. Chris Chappell?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to a little neuroscience here, that when we sing, our whole brain gets reordered. We access different parts. And then when we reemerge into a more cogitative mode, we're able to reorder the world itself. And I wanted to share that Maureen and I went to see The Passion According to St. Matthew at the LA Opera last week. And very, very powerful opening. Many of the dancers are from Ukraine. And the whole chorus opened by singing the Ukrainian anthem. And it just was very moving, very moving.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Gloria? Glad to have Gloria back with us. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Me?
Yeah.
I was going to say a couple of things. One that was kind of funny was my kids and I actually were farm workers up in Washington State. We ran out of money. My car broke down, and we went out in the summertime and picked strawberries with the Lummi Indians and rode out on the bus at 6:30 in the morning, the school bus, and was wonderful. But my kids were all both into theater. My son was 10, my daughter was a senior in high school, and they always sang while they were picking. They sang songs from you know, all the shows they'd been in, and they were always just singing. And when we talked to the Lummi kids, but we didn't really know them. They were, you know, but when our car got fixed, so we didn't have to take the bus, and we went out a little later and came out to the field, and one of the kids said, "Hey, we missed your songs." It was sweet. And my husband and I were very involved in the farm workers work with Cesar, and often we went up to Delano, and every time we were up there, there was so much music. There was always singing at all of those marches. But one of the things that I've noticed lately I can't believe I am still going to marches, and we are still marching about the same things. And some of us older ones were saying that there isn't music much at our marches here in Santa Barbara, at least. And we've talked to some of the young people about some of the songs, you know, that we all sang in all the anti-war marches all that time. And they were fascinated. They didn't know the songs. And so we got to teaching, sitting and teaching the kids some songs, and they love to sing them. But these days, there isn't as much music, if any of you notice, at least here, when we have gatherings. There isn't the music that there used to be. So we need to get those songs, you know, we shall overcome, all of those songs going again, because it does make a big difference. And music is very, very, very powerful. I don't know if any of you are familiar with a group called Threshold Choir. There is a group in, I think near Santa Monica. Anyway, I sing in a special choir here when it isn't COVID, although we still get together and sing. And we sing at bedsides of people who are dying and people who are very ill. And it's very, very powerful. We have been with people as they've gone, and it makes a big difference. So music is very powerful, and we need to keep it in our lives. So thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Yes, I'm going to reiterate what you're saying, because I've been on marches before where there's either no music or the music is so difficult and complex that they can't catch on. You have to practice it.
Right.
Before you can't learn it on the march. So
right.
You have simpler songs.
Mm-hmm. And so thank you both. The song leader, that is a specific skill. Yeah. And for sure, in African American experience, that in the churches and all, there were always song leaders who knew all the words, could teach the chorus, and was good at choosing the right song. And then that skill came, of course, into the civil rights movement, to be a song leader. Now, what's interesting, and I know we'll be talking about this in the coming weeks, the Poor People's March. When that comes to town, I think about a month from now, Reverend Janet, but with Reverend Barber and the Poor People's March, they specifically always have music as a part of that. And they talk very specifically about it. They teach people the songs, and they keep that tradition going. So you will see it in that march. But yes, for so many others, we have to really think about getting that the music back in. Mm-hmm.
Right. Good to see you, Dimitri. Go ahead.
Okay, so Gloria, thank you. I'm so happy to be going after you, because what you were saying is a great segue into what's on my mind. But I'm going to start a little bit further back about a little backstory. So about 4 years ago, I was at a meeting in Whittier, and Cesar Chavez's grandson was the keynote speaker. And he was relating his experience of speaking at Samohi, right? Which was not very positive. Apparently, there were some students that were giving him a hard time about, why do we need to have this holiday, blah, 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 whatever it was. And the grandson's take was, we're still fighting, right? We're still fighting this issue. And I really wanted to talk to him after that and say, hey, and his point was, even in the quote unquote liberal bastion of Santa Monica, there's still this sense of something, right? There's still a disconnect. And again, it was 4 years ago, so I'm not totally remembering, but I took it very personally because, hey, I'm from Santa Monica, and, it's still the People's Republic, sort of, kind of. And, and don't, let me talk to you about Santa Monica. There's kids from Malibu and Pacific Palisades and the North Side, and there's a whole diversity of people that go to Santa Monica High School. But I didn't, because I was, conflicted. But it made me think, or it became part of the thought process of generational understanding, right? And for me, I remember not eating grapes for years, right? But anybody who is 20 today probably doesn't even know that we used to boycott grapes unless they've been specifically told. And even at that, you know, I find, and I think there's some media out there about this, about how the new generations, the ascending generations, don't have that personal attachment to things like, you know, the protests of the 60s. I mean, I remember them because my mother made sure I knew them. Back before MLK was a holiday, we always took that day off and we went to a museum or we did something actually in connection to MLK, whether it was a movie or what have you. But I think that there's what we connect to, the receding generation, whether it's receding in the hairline or just receding into the past. We have a sense that is us, but it may not be relevant to the ascending generations. And I hear with some of them that they don't really care about that stuff. They care about what's going on now because they don't have a personal primary or secondary connection. So, and with white people, they're like, well, you know what? You want reparations for something that was done how many generations ago? And that's not me. I didn't enslave anybody, and so on and so forth. And I'm not supporting their issue, their claim. I'm just pointing it out. And I think that in the non-white communities, there's some of that too. It's like, hey, I don't care what happened 100 years ago. I don't care what happened to the Braceros. What have you done for me lately? And translating that into the music, one of the lines in the song that we were singing earlier had Woolworths in it. Woolworths hasn't existed for 40 years, right? So they're not going to know. The new generations aren't going to know. And so I think anthems are absolutely important. I mean, we need to have anthems. Hold on for a minute. I got to read my notes here. But I think that our anthems need to be not our anthems because we're receding. We can't take the new generation and put them where we are, right? We have to meet them where they are. And that includes with our anthems. We got to meet the ascending generations where they are. And anthems are part of that. And I'm going to put in the chat my personal modern anthem, which is a song called Rise by a band called Flowbots. They're very, very socially conscious. They're they are centered in Colorado. But the line that always strikes me in that is, what's in your alleyway? Recycling bins or bullet cases? And that just, to me, underscores that social, separation that I think may be the place where we can all sort of, the ascending generations and the receding generations can kind of come together. But holding on to the old anthems, I don't know that we're going to be able to hook the new generations in with that. And that's my share. And thank you for your time. And I'll post that song in the chat because it is I listen to it almost every day.
Great, that's very helpful. Thank you. And your insights as well.
Thank you, Dimitri. One of the things about singing the old ones is that it's more about teaching the history at this point. We don't sing, I'm going to sing at the Woolworths counter to try to make, a young person sing that. They're singing things like Freedom by Beyonce. And they're taking snippets of Kendrick Lamar songs and using them to march as part of the Black Lives Matter movement. So, they definitely have what I call with them sometimes modern day spirituals. I'll give an assignment out in class and say, so what do you consider your modern day freedom songs and songs that would be for your marches? And they have ideas about what it's going to be, what are their favorite songs. But there's also about learning the history. So if we're talking about Woolworths counters, then we're teaching about history, not saying you have to sing this. And it's interesting to see what they like and what they remember or what they've heard, and how they're making their own new freedom songs with things that, we would never think to make a freedom songs.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Kim. Chuck?
All right. Woolworth's Counters. I lived in Roanoke, Virginia back in the 40s. And I remember sitting at the counter with my mother, and the Black people come up to the end of the counter and order something to go. I asked my mother why, and she says, because they're Black. I don't think she used the word Black, but I had that experience. What I like to do is talk about experiences, and it helps me and maybe somebody, I think some of you will be interested. I met Guy Carawan in Laguna Beach at Orange County at the Laguna Sawdust Festival in the canyons. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I met Guy. I was down there, and it's the Sawdust Festival is well, I'm not going to try to tell you what it is, but it's sort of a counter festival to the main Laguna Beach Art Festival once a year. Still going on, I think. I heard dulcimer, and of course Appalachian stuff got my attention, and I walked over to where Guy Carawan and his son were playing a hammered dulcimer, and there was nobody was listening, and it turns out the guy made those instruments and played them well, and so I had a lot of time with him, at least half an hour, but we didn't talk about politics or anything other than the fact that he built this instrument, was able to play it beautifully, and I'd heard dulcimer, I had never heard of hammered dulcimer, so I'm really happy that I got to meet him there. Years before, actually, Ross Altman had, back when I first met Ross, he had told me about Guy and his involvement with the Highlander Center in Tennessee and again, Appalachia. And Guy had left, I don't know if it was LA, but somewhere else other than Tennessee, and had been part of the formation of the Highlander Center, which was a training ground for activists. Martin Luther King had been there. Rosa Parks had actually trained there just before she went, did the bus, the sets front of the bus. And when she left, somebody asked her, well, what are you going to do now, Rosa? And she said, oh, I'll think of something. And this is a story I've heard about her. So she sat down in the front row of the bus and started such a movement. Cesar Chavez, I had a bumper sticker, Cesar for governor. And back when bumper stickers were part of, the political and every other scene. And boy, did I get some looks. I had a cop follow me for miles, almost miles, it seemed, simply because he probably disagreed with that. And I never met Cesar, but I went to many of his meetings and heard many of his speeches. So that's my personal story about some important people in my life. The Highlander Center is still going as a training ground for activists, and I've never visited, but I sure would like to. That's it.
Thank you, Chuck. So I'm going to go to Hurley Jim and then Craig really briefly, because you already had one share, and then Joseph. So Hurley Jim.
Yeah, thanks. This is a great morning, and boy, singing and this kind of thing has just really been part of my growing up. I mean, in some ways, I grew up in the church in Ocean Park singing. Before I came to services, a long time I would just come to the singing group and that'd be it. And I know that there are other people who that's true for too. But I could talk and give many stories about how important singing is to me, in particularly the context of liberation. And but I'm just going to limit myself to one fairly brief one, which is, I got to mention the grapes thing since you brought that up, Dimitri. I think, and it was a certain age, it took us years before we'd eat grapes again. And even after starting to eat them again, convincing ourselves or being convinced that, okay, yeah, you can do it now. We weren't sure. And I don't think we ever eat a grape without thinking about who picked them. But yeah, so this story was just brief. Try to make it brief. I mean, it was this guy and I. We were involved in co-counseling. Probably each of us still are. We haven't connected in quite a while, but Frederick Rule. He and I drove to up near Salinas, actually somewhere in that area for a workshop. And I mean, the first thing we encountered, this is not quite relevant to the singing, although we were singing, but we encountered this dust storm in one of those big 40-car pileups. And he had just been in an accident, and I was driving. So he was courageous. He was being very courageous by, our weaving our way through that, checking to see if anybody was hurt and all that. But we made it to I'll just say Salinas, and we had the workshop. And then on the way back, we started singing pretty soon after we got going. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, and we took turns. Putting in a different verse, a different word each time, ain't gonna let no segregation and turn me around, ain't gonna let no, you put it all in, so it's, this white guy, black guys, all the way back to LA singing this song. So
Yeah, beautiful.
It was great.
Thank you, really, Jim. Okay, Craig, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And it's in reference to what Dimitri had said. And he makes a point, really, from my point of view, in defense of CRT. Because, and I will, bring this up further when I sit with Joanne and other members of CRJ within that planning committee. The reason why these children, feel ambivalent about it is because they're not being taught this. And if we look at CRT, if we look at Black History Month, it didn't start out as Black History Month. In its breath, it was just Negro History Week. So I think that's one of the dear things that we have to more or less instill within that, because that's American history. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Craig. And then Joseph, and then Rachel.
Yep. Very briefly, sometimes we tend to modernize the old hymns or the old songs and try to modernize it and fit it into our modern lingo. But there's a song, for example, sometimes at home in the Caribbean, we use the modern hymns or the modern songs and we throw them back. For example, there's a song or a hymn about the time Jesus spent in the wilderness. 40 days and 40 nights, thou wast tempted in the wild. 40 days and 40 nights, tempted and yet undefiled. And this is how we modernize it. Me alone in the wilderness. Me alone in the wilderness. 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. That's
Beautiful.
it. Some of it.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you. That was beautiful. Rachel Rose.
The very first time that I presented myself to the congregation at the church in Ocean Park, I sang 110 Soldier, which I learned as a child, and you've heard me sing it at least once or twice since. I learned as a child at around the age of 5 or 6 years old. And that song influenced me for the rest of my life, literally. So I just wanted to speak to the power of song. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just also want to mention that a lot of you know that when somebody is in their last days, and sometimes they can sing a song or they can resonate to a song when they can't speak or they don't resonate to anything else. They may not recognize their whole family, but they recognize the song. My mother-in-law could all of a sudden sing a Chinese song, Jesus Loves Me, in Chinese, because she was born to missionaries in China. So it's the power of song is real, and I appreciate all of you in your sharing. It's been very, very rich, and we're going to continue our sharing with Louise singing Bread and Roses.
Yes, thank you, Janet. What a rich morning. Thank you, Kim, for the idea of this. This is called Bread and Roses, and Bread and Roses was a phrase in a speech given by activist Helen Todd. She had a line in her speech. She was an American suffragette. It said bread for all and roses too, and then James Oppenheim wrote the lyrics, and it's been set to music 3 different times, but this version is the one I've heard of the most. Bread and Roses, and it's commonly associated with a textile strike in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and Ross has sung this many times at our church, I think. As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, 1,000,000 darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill-offs gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, we battle to for men, for they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead go crying through our singing their ancient cry for bread. Small art and love and beauty their drudging spirits knew. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we go marching, marching, we bring the greater days, for the rising of the women means the rising of the race. No more the drudge and idler tend that toil where one reposes, but the sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses. No more the drudge and idler tend that toil where one reposes, but the sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses. Thank you. It's just so wonderful to sing with you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for a wonderful, rich Sunday morning. I'm grateful to come to you from Rowland Heights with my mother at her home here this morning, and I'm so grateful to be here. We both are. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of your rich sharing, and we are going to unmute now and say together, carry on. So unmute your microphone. We reach our hands in a big circle. Say together, carry on. 1, 2, 3.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.